Assault and Battery, hosted by Mel and Kelly. Forget what you know. Forget what you know. Assault and Battery.
And we're live. Welcome to the first Saul and Battery after Season 1, Episode 1 of Better Call Saul. I'm Kelly Toole at KELLYTHUL on Twitter. I don't have my name tag up because the darn show ran a little long and Mel and I were scrambling to get ready. But also with me is Mel.
Hi, I'm Mel at Karmic9 on Twitter, and how did y'all like that first episode of Better Call Saul? Let us know with the hashtag TalkSaul.
Talk Saul, which we were playing around a little bit, and we were going to try a Saul and Battery as a hashtag, but that seemed a little long, so we're sticking with the Talk Saul to begin with here. So we're just what we're going to try and do is come on 15 minutes after every show and talk about our reactions, kind of step through the show, pick out our favorite quote, and what we're really excited about is to get a chance to interact with you as well. So hopefully we get some folks tweeting at us, and if not, Mel and I will just talk about Saul, which would be perfectly fine as well. So,
Yep, works for me.
alrighty, so a couple things. I guess going into it is, I think at one point in time, they were going to have Better Call Saul follow Walking Dead all the time. And it ends up now that it just does it tonight, and then Saul moves to Mondays, and then they're on different nights. And I think that's a good idea because it was a bit of a transition from a pretty intense Walking Dead to Better Call Saul. Was that your experience, Mel?
Yeah, as much as I was looking forward to Better Call Saul, I was a little out of joint coming out of Walking Dead, or at least that particular episode of Walking Dead, to come into this, because it wasn't like this was a big barrel of laughs at the beginning. So it's kind of a downer at the beginning. So it was a little hard to get into it at first. So I am very glad they are doing it on Mondays and it won't be with The Walking Dead anymore. So
Yeah,
good choice.
without a doubt. Yeah, and then so Walking Dead, of course, kind of ends on somewhat of a grim note, and then we slide right into Better Call Saul, and we'll go right into the cold opening to begin with, which was you've got some old timey music playing, some cinnamon rolls being made in almost a meth like fashion. And we see, and so as we can assume we're checking into post Breaking Bad Saul Goodman.
Yes,
And
it was a Cinnabon in Omaha. It was
just
so
just
awesome.
just as he predicted. And I couldn't tell. I'll have to go back and watch. I don't know if his name badge said he was the manager or not. He appeared to be a managerial Cinnabon rank. I couldn't tell.
I don't know. He didn't look like a manager to me. He just looked like some poor schlub slaving away at Cinnabon, which just added to the whole sadness of it all. And the black and white and very noir. It was poor, poor Saul.
Yeah, with a not a great mustache either.
Oh no,
Not
that
a
was totally, totally a porn stash.
absolutely.
It needs to
And
go.
and so we see the he's kind of startled for a second because there's this he's always kind of looking over his shoulder now. There's a big guy that kind of makes his way towards him, and he was just going to greet some other people, so he dodges a bullet. But then he leaves the Cinnabon at the end of a hard day's Cinnabonning, and travels to a really nice home, a very nice house, as a matter of fact, which I'm assuming is what he could afford based on his previous
Yeah.
activities. But
Uh,
he's
yeah. I figured that was a perk of that's well, his leftover money.
yeah,
So.
and he was watching Home Shopping, and then he eventually pulls out some tapes of his old commercials. And I need to also make sure we stand up the Q&A here, Mel. Hadn't thought about that.
I've got it open.
Excellent. Good for you.
But I don't know what was more sad, all of that, the black and white, just general despondency of our favorite lawyer, or the fact that he had a VCR and those commercials were on a VHS tape. I don't know. It was very sad.
So our good friend Mike, Official Pagan, has pointed out, as a former baker, he can attest that the struggle is real. and I'm sure Mike had a very grim baking background. So, and awesome you're out there, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
And so he ends, and then there's a very sad Saul crying watching his commercials, and quite a shift from he was kind of king of the world to not so much anymore. So
yes, and I don't like to see him that unhappy, because we're used to him being so upbeat, getting away with things, and so he's very sad at the beginning of this. It's a grim future for our favorite criminal lawyer. Yes
indeed, and apparently a grim past too, because we start off and we'll go into Act 1, and we're in a Albuquerque courtroom, and everybody's waiting and waiting and waiting. There's a fine unicorn doodle that somebody's drawing. I wasn't sure who did that, but it was some guy with a sword riding a unicorn, which was very nice. And they're waiting on Saul. And turns out that Saul is in the bathroom rehearsing, getting ready for his. And we see this several times through the show, that he's practicing what we see as this natural flow of Saul from Breaking Bad. I guess for a while he had to practice to get to that rhythm. But you see the Saul Goodman hands starting from Jimmy McGill, even in the practice there. And finally he bursts into the courtroom, and so I don't know how. So I guess for folks that are, we're going to figure this out as we go by. But right now, Mel and I are thinking we'll kind of step through the show, talk about our reactions, and we're going to mention our favorite quote. And I don't know. I guess when we're at the point in the show when our favorite quote occurs, is that when we want to?
Well, we're basically at the point of mine, so I don't know. Do we want to?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
So
there were a lot of great quotes in this episode, particularly towards the end, but I'm going to still have to go with my favorite quote being from the very beginning, when he's giving his speech to the jury, and it was the part where he says, "The red corpuscles are corpuscling," and that was my favorite quote. I don't know why.
That was outstanding. I originally thought, because I had read some reviews of the show before it started, and they talked about, so I knew the first line was going to be, "Oh, to be 19 again," which I thought was pretty outstanding too, and I thought that was going to be my quote, but it wasn't. The corpuscling one knocked it loose, and it was pretty awesome during this whole scene too. You got this kind of fluorescent light buzz going through as a background noise on the whole thing. But actually, my favorite quote comes as he finishes, and these three clowns that he's defending were rightfully convicted, because after Saul's compelling defense, the prosecutor just pulled out a videotape and played what they did.
Yeah, that pretty much sent him to jail.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate, though. That was the only part that kind of a callback to the Walking Dead episode that we had just seen, since they cut the head off of a corpse and did unfortunate things to it.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And there comes my favorite quote, which was when he's collecting his $700 per defense, versus he thought he was going to get $700 per defendant. He said, "They had sex with a head," which I'm going to go with that one. There's a couple other ones that are pretty good later, but I'm going with they had sex with a head as mine. So.
Yes.
And so he got a 700. That's not exactly a lot. And then it's pretty cool. He walks out to get to his car, and he's heading towards what looks like the Saul Goodman Cadillac. But he passes that by and gets in an Esteem. Now, an Esteem is not a model I'm familiar with. Are you familiar with the Esteem?
I'm impressed. I'm not good with cars, so I had no idea what the model of the car was. All I caught was it was a banana yellow, very rundown car.
Yeah, they closed in. I had because again in some of the pre-read stuff they talked about. You knew that Walt's Aztec played a big role in Breaking Bad, and so they said there's no Aztec, but there's an Esteem, and then they closed in on the Esteem title. Once again, our good friend Mike is pointing out from the earlier court scene we were all 19 and we shouldn't judge. So I don't know. I'm judging. I'm
gonna judge, Mike. I'm sorry if you've participated in that. I'm gonna judge.
Yeah. But he gets into Esteem with one red door. Maybe we'll find out a little bit more about that. And he runs into Mike, our good friend Mike, at the booth.
Mike.
Yeah. So this was. This, I was really fired up. As we get to the end of the show, there was a moment that exceeded my Mike excitement, which we'll come to, but it was really cool to see Mike again being completely Mike and not giving Saul any slack whatsoever and sent him back for another sticker. And I believe, based on some of the previews we see, this is not over between Mike and Saul at the toll booth. So.
No, but it still is very, very sad to see the wonderful Mike reduced to being a parking lot attendant. This was all a very sad episode at the beginning. It was all very demoralizing.
Yeah. It's not like and then there's no up. Really, this one, and that was the other thing that I had kind of read, as I said, that there is a lot of humor in this, but in terms of kind of the first episode was probably the grimmest of all of them, and yeah, I'd say it was.
It was pretty grim. And it's a very different. Jimmy McGill is so different than the Saul Goodman that we've come to love. So it's very sad, and I'm already getting a good picture of why he became who he became. So they're doing their job.
Yep, absolutely. And so we leave the courthouse and we stop at a local restaurant where we meet people I hope become regulars. Craig and Betsy Kettleman. Craig's a stickler. He's a stickler. He's a treasure and a stickler. Unfortunately, there's also $1.6 million missing right now. And then we find out a little later in the show that Betsy's not one to stick around the scene of an accident. So seems like quite the couple there. And then so Saul makes his pitch. And he goes into, or Jimmy makes his pitch and goes into kind of full, trying all the magic. And he got so close to getting them to sign, and then they back off. And I really thought Bob Odenkirk did a fantastic job in portraying that incredible desire to want to see them sign, and then the disappointment when they didn't. And so I thought I did.
Yeah, he did a great job, but also the cinematics of it. I mean, it was shot so well that it's just, I was having Breaking Bad flashbacks, specifically during that scene, and just how well orchestrated it seemed to be. I loved it. It was one of the best scenes of the episode.
Yeah, and they're fun characters too.
Yeah.
And speaking of fun characters, and I highly recommend. If you don't do story sync during the shows, the AMC shows, Walking Dead and Better Call Saul, they give you a lot of information because our two gentlemen that show up next on the it's Laurentis and Calvin Lindstrom. Lars and Cal are two bearded skaters. as Saul's trying to send flowers to Betsy to kind of to ease the skids, he all of a sudden a body flies across the car, and Saul's hit him, and they're saying, "What are you gonna do to make it right?" And then the light bulb goes on with Saul, and he gives one of the injured, in quotes, one a big kick, and calls them, I believe, Starlight Express, which I thought was nice.
Yeah. Well, he did such a good job. It seemed like he was going to fall for it for a minute before he clues them in that he's not buying it. So another great job there. But yeah, I'm sure they're going to be regulars, at least I hope. Our new version of Badger and Skinny Pete.
Yeah, because I don't know how long they're going to be around. We'll see. But
Yeah, true.
they're pretty funny so far. I like them. Uh, and then Saul kind of explains that he's not exactly rolling in it. And another good quote was, they wanted $500. He goes, the only way this card's worth $500 if there's a 300 hooker in the back seat, which I thought was also a pretty good quote.
Yeah, I wrote that one down as a contender. I still had to go with the corpuscling though.
Yeah, it was good. I got a good chuckle out of that one.
Yes. The delivery on it was just great too.
Yeah, he thought he was doing his best material, and he thought he had him, but obviously not. I mean, but the way it goes.
Yep.
So then I'm disappointed that it wasn't the laser tag place, but we did get to see the nail salon again, where Jimmy has a very small office in the back, very small office.
Yes, but it had, filing cabinets and a desk and a little TV. It didn't look nearly as run down as I thought it would. So.
Yeah, and I don't know if that water cooler that was just off to his right was supposed to be a bit of a wave towards the columns that he has in his bigger office. Just kind of a hint to say eventually this man will have columns behind him.
Yeah.
But it's a bleak setting, and another good quote. Cucumber water for customers only. Poor Jimmy can't even get cucumber water.
Yes, and she, called him on the defending people that have sex with heads. So,
yes.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. Word got around.
Yes, indeed. Quickly. I mean, that got in the paper quick. Or I guess it's the next. I don't know what it was, but that was fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Saul tries some Jedi phone tricks to get his phone to ring, or Jimmy does. I'm going to keep calling him Saul. Do better here. And then I don't know how your resolution was when you saw him open the check to see. I was able to leverage the power of Story Sync again to where it said, why does Jimmy have a check for $26,000? And why did he tear it up? And why was it from this company with a McGill in the name of it?
Yeah. I was able to see that amazingly enough. I didn't even have my glasses on.
Oh, great. Yeah, I had to use Story Sync to clue me in. But so he tears up obviously a guy need money, and he tears up a check, and that ends Act 1, which was a long act, because just for after the cold open, that first act ran almost till the half-hour mark, I think.
Yeah, I started to wonder if they were showing this episode without commercials. I was going to be, I'm in trouble. Oh.
So when we return to Act 2, Jimmy is making his way to a very nice law office of Hamlin, and McGill. And I like his name for Howard Hamlin.
Lord Vader.
Yeah, Lord Vader here.
That was a nice touch. I liked it.
And we start to get some mentions of Chuck. And it was interesting on Twitter. So I would say the majority of what I saw on Twitter, a lot of people really liked the show.
Good.
There was also a pretty decent chunk of people that were very confused of what was going on in terms of it, like who's Chuck and all that. And again, because I've been so excited about this show and reading up on it, I kind of knew who that character was going to be and all that, but that's kind of makes its way through the rest of it. But he comes in, he's talking about Chuck, and he wants to. I did like when he was talking about, hey, Chuck, he wants to cash out. 1/3 of this stuff is his, and so he basically starts going through everything in the room and saying 1/3 of these chairs are Chuck's,
Right.
and 2 and 1/3 of these light thingies are Chuck's, and this Danish is Chuck's, and this Howard Hamlin guy's a cool character, and he's like, you can have all the Danish, Jimmy, and all that.
He's so smarmy, you just want to smack him.
Yep, and he seems to be working an angle all the
Mhm.
time. I saw a really good interview with Bob Odenkirk before the show started where he goes, Howard Hamlin, he's not written for you to hate him, but you can't help it. And
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good. And especially, we find out that he's taking a meeting with Craig and Betsy as Saul's leaving. And so that was a little sad. And so Saul just kicks the crap out of a trash can, which looks like a trash can he's visited once or twice before.
Yes, it already has a sizable dent in it. He adds a few more before he leaves.
And that was some pretty adept kicking to be able to kind of kick that trash can and have it keep coming back, because he got it about 3 or 4 times. That was
He did.
very impressive. And then gets right outside the door, and Kim, who was up in the law office, is out there having a cigarette, and they apparently are at least acquaintances. But
I would hope so, since he just pulled that cigarette out of her mouth and took a hit on it. So.
Yep. Kind of asked her to do something, said she couldn't.
Yep.
And that. Anything else on Hamlin, and McGill for now, Mel?
No, other than, we find out there that there's something wrong with Chuck and that he expects to be coming back to work, which we get explained to us a little bit later. So, and we find out who Chuck is a little bit later.
And again, Mike, who's the most valuable player for Saul and Battery tonight, Mike has tweeted out a question, and his quibble is that he wanted Chuck to sing a Spinal Tap song. Because we all know the actor playing Chuck, Michael McKean, was in the awesome movie Spinal Tap. But he's not that guy. He's not Lenny either. So.
Yeah, I know him more as Lenny.
But now we get to meet Chuck a little bit more in Act 3.
Yes.
And we see Saul pull up to a house. He takes his phone and his watch. He puts it in the mailbox. He walks into the house, and Chuck asks him, have you grounded yourself? I don't know. How do you ground yourself?
You've got to touch metal that's grounded, and I guess not wear your socks to scuff along the carpet. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. And apparently what we're seeing in this house is there's no electricity, there's lanterns, there's a cooler with food in it. Saul and Jimmy's coming in with new ice and new food. It's all pretty bleak. And Chuck keeps telling Jimmy, I'm going to beat this. There's a couple other little goodies we get in here. There's like 126 people that work at Hamlin, and McGill, and at least Chuck still. Apparently, Jimmy worked in the mailroom at some point in time.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
They talk about money. They talk about the problems with electromagnetism, and then and Jimmy keeps trying to get Chuck to cash in, and he's not wanting to do that. And then Chuck drops a little bomb on Jimmy at the end of it.
Yep. Turns out that Lord Vader had paid Chuck a little visit earlier in the day, and whatever is wrong with Chuck, it appears that Chuck has accepted a stipend from the company, which of course would prevent them from being sued for Chuck to cash out if he's still technically working there, which is what Jimmy's been fighting against all this time. So, I don't know. Does any of your prior research tell you what's wrong with Chuck? Or
No.
Just that all we know is that he's probably gone off his rocker somehow?
I haven't found anything beyond they said he's got some mysterious disease, and so apparently he has some sort of incredible fear of electromagnetism, and so that's where everything's got to be off. And also, it turns out that Lord Vader he feels that it's confusing to have the James M. McGill law firm, and that that he should change his name. Chuck suggests Vanguard, and a couple others there.
Yeah.
And so Jimmy's.
And he thinks that Howard would, of course, pick up the tab for printing him some new matchbooks. I don't think so.
No, probably not.
Yep.
And so we got a chance to meet Chuck in that conversation, and then things start to pick up. We come back for Act 4, and this incredible skateboarding park. Lars and Kyle, or Jimmy finds Lars and Kyle, and we are regaled with the story of Slippin' Jimmy.
Slippin' Jimmy.
From Cicero, Illinois. And he was talking about Michigan and State, all the streets in Chicago, which would be good ones. And apparently, Slippin' Jimmy made his trade by falling in front of stores and clearing thousands of dollars.
By slipping on the ice. Yep.
And he was a happening guy in Cicero.
Yep, and we find out that poor Lars and Cal, the best money they've ever made in a day was $630, and that took 2 falls to get. So, Slippin' Jimmy's going to show them how to work this gig. He's got a job for them.
He's going to be the rising tide that raises all dinghies.
All the dinghies. I thought you would like that one. So what's the plan?
So we go into Act 5 where we've got actually they kind of cover through the plan through in the rest of Act 4 here. By the way, Mike has been nice enough to share on Twitter a link to how to ground yourself on WikiHow. So that's handy. We'll be looking that up. But the basic plan is to basically pull the same thing I did on Saul on Betsy, and then he's going to come in and be the White Knight and save them from everything. So They get all set up for this. Moving to Act 5, they get all set up. Perfectly timed. Big collision. Betsy waits, and she waits, and she waits. And then she leaves. She leaves the scene of the crime.
But we find out in the next act that it's not, they've messed up. It's not really her. Right.
Well, okay, so here's where I'm confused, because
the little old lady that ends up getting out of the car, the windshield is busted in.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm thinking they hit the wrong car to begin with, and it was never Betsy.
Ah, and she left. So the grandma left. Yeah, and this is where my notes are a little messy as we get into we'll just kind of finish off the show here in terms of it. So they got their ways, yo. The trailer is there.
Yes, they do.
Hanging on the back of a truck on their skateboards. And they make their way to a very nice home. There's this nice elderly lady, Hispanic lady that gets out. And
speaks no English.
They're talking about speaks no English, and they want righteous dinero.
So she calls her mijo.
Yep. You felonied my brother, which was another pretty good quote.
Yeah.
And so they go in the room and into the house, and then Saul's desperately trying to find them, and he eventually spots the car, and he knocks on the door, tells them it's Officer of the Court. And why don't you wrap it up, Mel? What happens when the door opens?
Well, when the door finally opens, Jimmy is met with a gun in his face, and then a hand reaches through and jerks him into the house. And then a face appears, and it is the face of one of our favorite characters from Breaking Bad, none other than Tuco.
Which I had no clue. I knew they kept saying there was going to be somebody make an appearance in this from the Breaking Bad universe, and I assumed it was going to be probably the person in that house, but I had no clue it was going to be Tuco. That's amazing.
I think maybe I saw that somewhere, that we were going to see how he got started in it, but I wasn't that surprised, because I think that I did read that somewhere. Or maybe I just assumed it was going to be Tuco. Yep. I don't know.
And John McGevna, thanks for listening, John. John's out there, and he's given a
Yes.
shout out to say that he thinks that the "open up in the name of the officer of the court" was also a good line, which it was.
Yes.
Apparently not a very effective line.
No, because he was met with a gun. So obviously, Tuco's not very afraid of the court system.
No. Based on past experience, I'm gonna say no.
Yes.
But
So we get to see how that whole relationship gets started, and who knows? Who knows what happens tomorrow night?
that's right. So we'll get the show page out for tomorrow night. And so, folks, if you want to kind of join us after that, we're going up against Talking Dead tonight, so that's that's kind of tough competition. We won't have that tomorrow night, but our plan is still 15 minutes after show to jump on and do this. We'll love your feedback in terms of if there's something that would be more interesting in terms of an approach. We're just excited about the show. I've been looking forward to this to a long time. Um, I did enjoy it. I'm excited to keep seeing more. It probably did, pacing wise, start off maybe a little slow, but I enjoyed the whole thing. And I think some of the characters are, I was worried, could Saul Goodman carry a character? Could the Saul Goodman character carry a show? And it certainly looks like they can do some pretty interesting television here.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it suffered the beginning being so slow, and slow and kind of like I said, a little demoralizing. It suffered from coming in after Walking Dead. For me, I was not in really the best frame of mind after that particular episode of The Walking Dead with a major character death and all of that to jump into another show that was going to start out slow. But Bob Odenkirk did a great job of making Jimmy McGill a character that I want to know more about. We know who he becomes, and this is the story of how he becomes that person, and you've got sympathy for him here. I thought they did a good job with showing that he obviously cares for his brother. At least to me, it's not all about money. He cares about his brother, and he's trying to do what's best for him, but he's fighting him. So he seems like a person who, yeah, he wants money. He's got questionable morals, but there are things that he cares about, and he's suffering. And I don't like to see my Saul Goodman suffer, and he is suffering in this episode. So I'm interested to see where it goes from here. The last, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of the show really picked up into more of what I think the season's going to be more like. So, but they had to tell us, they had to show us why we should care about Jimmy McGill.
Absolutely. And I thought they did. I thought they did a nice job with it, and I'm excited to do it. So we will, 24 hours from now or so, be back for round number 2 of a Saul and Battery. Appreciate everybody listening, and we'll keep shooting out those links, and keep joining us on Twitter and hashtag Talk Saul. Tweet at Mallory at Karmic9 or Kelly Toole, and we will be seeing you all tomorrow. So thanks for listening.
All right, we'll talk to y'all tomorrow, everybody.